Today, we take you into one of the most famous fly shops in the country. It's located in the desert and the major route to some of the most famous waters out west. Recently, Fly Fish Food purchased this shop, and today you're going to hear from their new shop manager. You're going to get some fly shop etiquette and tips, and some of the best times to fish this part of eastern Idaho. This is the Wet Fly Swing podcast, where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that big trip, and what you can do to give back the fish species we all love. Hey, I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a little fly shop and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. Madison Losee, fly shop manager at Fly Fish Food Jimmy's, is going to walk us through some tips on preparing for your next adventure out west. You are going to get some big tips on avoiding the big crowds out there, including fishing on the Henry's Fork. You're going to find out why she doesn't like a dry dropper in June and July. We're going to talk about what she does instead, and we're also going to talk about some success on fishing the Twitch. Get into the Twitch today. Plus, you'll hear about the fly shop celebrity that walked into her shop this last year and was a big surprise. We're going to hear that story. Back into Yellowstone Teton territory. Here we go. Madison Losee from flyfishfood.com. How you doing, Madison?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Great to have you on the show. I was just checking out. You're the manager of the new, it's not the new fly shop. It's Jimmy's all season angling, and now it's Fly Fish Food. It's owned by Fly Fish Food. You guys are going through a transition. I'm really excited about it because this shop was well known. I've heard a lot about it over the years, and I know you don't have all the history, but we're going to talk a little bit about that and then how you came to run one of the biggest name fly shops out there and your connection to Fly Fish Food. So first off, maybe just tell me, how are things going at the shop? Are you in it like on a daily, regular basis?
Yeah, I'm here pretty well every day. I mean, I took a little break. I had a baby this summer, so
oh wow,
had a
Congrats.
Little break there. But yeah, I'm in the shop, and it's super fun. We have a great local community, very tying heavy community as well. So yeah, it's been fun to be here.
That's right. Yeah, and I think when we talked to I talked to Curtis a while back, he mentioned that. We talked a little bit about that, the fact that the shop is kind of a fly tying shop, kind of first almost, right? Like people knew it for that. What is it to you? Have you, since you've been there, have you been kind of tweaking things, or do you just jump in and was it ready to go?
Yeah, so what we did when the changeover took place is we brought in about 3 times as much inventory as what was in here previously. So, I mean, Jimmy was always known for having a great selection, and we kind of reworked the shop so we had room for an even bigger selection of what was there. And that's been really neat to see. The big one that's made I'd say like the biggest difference is our fly selection in general. And so, I mean, it's cool because we're a really tying heavy area, but at the same time, you still have all the people that are heading out on a trip and need to know what flies to get. And yeah, we probably have 4 times as many flies as what were in here previously. So about 4,000 different patterns.
Right. So you got a ton of inventory there and people coming through there. And you're in, tell us what city you're in there.
Yeah, so we're in Idaho Falls, Idaho, just on the southeast side of the state.
Perfect. And you're right in the hub. People coming through, if they're fishing all those famous waters, the Henry's Fork, the South Fork of Snake, everything out there. You're kind of a hub. People are coming through that town, right, to get out there.
Yeah, which is really cool, like where Idaho Falls is located, because I mean, you have I-15 heading north, and Highway 20 and 26 take you out to some great waters as well. So we're kind of in a central location, and there's so many great fishable waters within, I mean, even a 2-hour radius can take you to some really unique locations.
Nice. What, so have you worked in a fly shop before, or is this your first gig as a manager?
So this would be my first gig as a manager. So a little background, I worked retail in high school, and I've always just enjoyed retail, but I grew up working for my family's drift boat company. So I've been around the fly fishing industry for a long time, but I also had worked a couple retail jobs on and off while I was working for my family's company. And then I was kind of just looking for a change and saw that this job was coming up and said I may as well give it a shot. And yeah, so it's my first managing gig, but I have a retail background and a fly fishing background.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. How does it feel with Fly Fish Food? I mean, these guys are Curtis and, the crew, they're out there kind of leading the way on a lot of things. Does it feel pretty awesome to be with that group?
Yeah, I mean, it's really crazy. I mean, take for granted that we work for like the largest fly shop in the country, or if not the world, kind of a deal. And it's really cool to see what processes they have to keep a shop running. And I mean, it's really cool. Like Curtis's background with everything complements Cheech's background, so they work really well together that direction, and it's cool to see how this all works.
That's it. Yeah, like you said, they're huge out there. I can't remember. I know we have the story on the podcast from years back when we talked to all those guys, but yeah, they pretty much, the videos, right, have been running the things. Are you doing any of that stuff? Do you get excited about kind of doing you're doing a podcast now. I know you've done some of this stuff. Is this something you like doing? You're going to do more of?
So I definitely would say it's out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting to do. And I mean, that's what life is just kind of getting out of your comfort zone. And so like last week I filmed a few fly tying tutorials, and never
nice.
would I have thought I would have filmed a fly tying tutorial. So kind of crazy, but it's fun.
Yeah. When you do the fly tying tutorials, were you doing those just kind of on your own, or did you have like Cheech and Curtis like helping get that dialed in?
Yeah. So they have the full studio down in Utah. So they just had it all set up, and I had a couple of patterns I'd wanted to film. And anyway, so they had Brigham does the majority of their filming. So they had all that set up, and I just tied a couple flies in front of the camera.
There you go. And how'd it feel? You get through it pretty well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I said, it was different because I hadn't really done something like that before, but it was fun.
Yeah. Could we find those? Are those out there online yet?
No, they're not. I'm not sure when they'll be up, but sometime soon.
Nice. Well, let's talk a little about, like I said, we've been out in that area quite a bit over the last few years, and, you've got some famous waters like we mentioned. When people are coming into the shop, what are some of the most common questions you're getting? I mean, I'm assuming people are buying flies, but do you get a lot of questions, a lot of traffic through there?
Yeah, we get a fair amount of traffic. Where we're located in Idaho Falls is, right downtown. So not only do we have a bunch of people come in that are heading out to go fish, but we get a lot of like the summer traffic.
Sure. Like people that aren't even into like maybe new to fly fishing.
Yep, exactly. And so like we have our hats and t-shirts crew that they want something that just says Idaho Falls on it, or Yellowstone area kind of stuff. But yeah, so I mean, where to fish is always a big one. And what's cool is, we're 30 minutes to the Henry's Fork or 30 minutes to the South Fork. Like prime locations on both of those. So we have a lot of people stop in for flies and recommendations on where to go, what rod should they be using, what line should they use, kind of a deal.
Right. So when people come in there and you've never seen them before and they're like, hey, we're kind of new, we've never been out in this area, we want to go fly fishing, how do you have that conversation?
Yeah, so the first question always is like, how far do they want to drive? Because I think what people think is, oh, the Snake River runs right through Idaho Falls. This must be the big like snake that everyone wants to talk about fishing. And it's kind of a weird area to try and fly fish. Not that there isn't fly fishing opportunities right in town, but it's not when people think, oh, we're going to go fish the snake. They're not like on the main South Fork floating through the canyon right in Idaho Falls. So the first question always is like, well, how far are you willing to drive? Because despite the river flowing through town, you're about 30 to 45 minutes to where you might actually want to go fish.
Yeah. So let's just say the person has an hour, plenty of time. Can they head over to, where do you point them if that's the case?
Yeah. So, depending on the time of year, like in middle of June, I wouldn't say you should go wade the South Fork, but there's a ton of wading opportunities on the Henry's Fork, just outside Ashton. And so we send a fair bit of people to, the more popular spots up through there. And it's so cool. It's like hatch wise. It's like, oh, people don't really recognize like, oh yeah, you could be in the middle of the salmon fly hatch.
God, I know.
But it's like, yep, be prepared for crowds, but it's really cool.
It is. So even with the Henry's Fork, even though it can get really busy, it still can be a pretty amazing time for people going over there, even if it was one of their first times hitting the river.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you'll float through and see, 20 people within quarter-mile section, but they're all catching fish, so.
Yeah, it seems like it's known as a pretty technical river. How do you coach somebody if they're going in, they're doing a DIY thing? How do you coach them to give them the best shot to, hook up with some fish?
Yeah, and I think that's where, I think when people think the Henry's Fork, their first thought is always, the ranch. And that's where it's going to be like more of your technical fishing. But once you get through like some of the lower stuff, I wouldn't say it's as intimidating as you would think. So, I mean, the first would just be kind of like the time of year, what hatches are there. And I mean, if you're not seeing bugs, probably shouldn't throw a salmon fly in the middle of a blueing hatch kind of a deal. But so yeah, just being aware of what hatches are going on and then directing people to the spot and, how to fish different patterns in different spots, whether they're going to be, just throwing a single dry or nymphing or whatever it may be.
Right. That's a good point. So yeah, it's not all the ranch. So there's places you can go and probably maybe even get away from some of the crowds and potentially have success still. That sounds like that's pretty good advice.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So in the shop there, what do you guys have going as far as the team? Is it just you in there? Is there other staff in there throughout the week?
Yeah, so we have a couple others. So there's the assistant manager, AJ, and then there's we have a few part-timers. We have a kid named Henry, there's Zach, and then there's Kelly Glissmeyer. But for the most part, like on a daily basis, you would see myself or an AJ, and then Henry's here most of the time, and the other two are just 1 or 2 days a week.
Perfect. And so you've been there. How long have you been in the shop there?
Yeah, so the changeover took place June 1st of last year, so I've been there since then.
Yeah, so over a year. So what is it? So now that you've been in it over a year now, how's it feel? And what is it about the fly shop that you really love, getting you in there every day, being there?
Yeah, I really love the interaction with customers. I mean, it's so fun. We have, a group of regulars you'll see every week. And there's a lot to learn from these guys. They've been fly fishing for, some of them 50 plus years. So it's just really cool to interact with, our local community that direction. And it's fun to, see and be in the thick of new product and learn as much as you would want to about dubbing or thread or things like that. So that's really cool or whatever new fly rods coming out this next year. And learning more of like the gear techie side of things is fun.
Yeah. Are you kind of a more like a gear techie nerd or more of a fly tying nerd?
I'd say like maybe more gear. I mean, I've known how to tie since I was about 10, but I wasn't really super big on it until like the last, being involved in the shop, and you want to mess around with new materials more and more. You get ideas. And so I've really focused on tying more the last year or so. But no, I'd say like a good mix of both.
Yeah. And Jimmy, so obviously Jimmy's All Season Angling, that was the name before. Do you know a little bit about Jimmy? Can you give us a little like of what you know? I mean, I'm sure you still get some people coming in there like, hey, where's Jimmy? Do you still hear that occasionally?
Yes, we do. And Jimmy's such a great person and a staple in the community. And so there's a lot of loyalty that goes to him that direction. But Jimmy's doing great. He's fishing and hunting all that he could possibly want. He went to Mongolia a couple months ago. So, I mean, all these big bucket list trips that I feel like you sit and talk about, I think he's taking the opportunity to go on.
Yeah, he's going for it. Because I'm guessing, I was never in the shop when he was there, but I'm guessing, I hear this from a lot of shop owners where when you have a fly shop, you kind of get stuck in the shop because everybody wants to see you, and then you don't get out and fish and travel. So it sounds like Jimmy's getting his fix now that he's missed some years.
Yes, absolutely. So, no, it's been fun. And we still see Jimmy, every other week or so. He comes in and stocks up on some tying materials. And
oh, yeah. That's it. Does he give you any advice? Does he tell you like, hey, or is he just got to get his stuff and go?
We sit and chat for a while for sure. He tells us where he's been fishing and how it's been and what patterns he's been tying for that. So it's been awesome.
And does he fish pretty much? I mean, I grew up around a shop too, a fly shop, and my dad was the owner. And it seemed like whenever you asked him a question, I remember when I was a kid, he would had fished it, like every place you can imagine. Was Jimmy the same way as he fished everything around that southeastern Idaho area?
I would say so. He's covered a lot of water for sure.
Yeah. And what is his name? What's Jimmy's last name?
Gabettas.
Oh, Gabettas. Okay. Nice. So you're in there. So you're rolling in the shop. And today, I mean, we're in a kind of getting close to November. As does the time of year change on what you do in the shop, or are you kind of doing the same thing every day, just kind of greeting customers throughout the year?
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing. And we're kind of heading into that switch of not so many people are going out to fish versus people are stocking up on tying materials. And then we have quite a few people that, like, especially like the guides in the community, once their season's over, they start heading on like their saltwater trips. So a lot more like saltwater materials are getting sold this time of year.
That's right. And are you going to be doing any, are you into that destination stuff? Is that something that you're interested in getting into in the future?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's kind of hard at the moment. And it's, one of the deals is we have so much good water within, 2-3 hour radius. Unless you really want to go do like saltwater stuff, I have a hard time leaving this area.
Yeah, I know you're in one of the meccas. I mean, not only you said the Snake, but then you have Montana, which isn't far away.
Yep, exactly.
And everything else.
And then Wyoming too.
And Wyoming, yeah, that's the other thing you don't hear as much about, but Wyoming is huge, right? There's tons of water out there.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, we spend a fair bit of time in Wyoming as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely. So is that your area? If you had a home water or area that you spend more of your time in, is that kind of where you're heading, or what's that look like?
I'd say we still spend the majority of our time, on the Henry's Fork and the South Fork, just because they're so close. But then, yeah, we definitely make the time to go do a couple trips to Wyoming for sure. Yeah, I really like the Snake through Jackson. That's a fun fishery.
Oh, the Snake River through Jackson.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the Snake. So, I mean, obviously the Snake is huge. I mean, it flows through all of kind of Idaho and all these. Well, you got South Fork of the Snake, but kind of is everything out there flowing into the Snake? Is that kind of how it's working?
Yeah, I'd say so, like for the most part.
Grand Teton Fly Fishing is a premier guide service and fly shop that has access to some of the most coveted rivers and lakes in western Wyoming. Their simple goal is to share their valued resource and have you experience a native cutthroat trout rising to a single dry fly in the shadows of the Tetons. You can check out Grand Teton right now at grandtetonflyfishing.com. Let them know you heard of them through this podcast. And then when you say the Snake by Jackson, where is that exactly?
Yeah, so just in western Wyoming, the Snake River runs through Jackson Hole. It starts at Jackson Lake and then flows down from there. So you'll fish through Grand Teton National Park is a fun place to go for sure.
Yeah, Grand Teton, that's it. So that's a whole Grand Teton area, Jackson Hole and the South Fork of the Snake. And yeah, we've had a few episodes with some of the lodges on there, but is that something somebody can do pretty doable? Do you have to have a boat to fish, that part of the Snake?
You don't have to have a boat. The nice thing with a boat is you just get to cover a lot more water. And it's a big river to do so. And I wouldn't say, I'd just be cautious on what sections you're doing for sure, because there is like the whole whitewater canyon.
Oh, there is. There's some whitewater.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy in the whitewater game over there for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And is this something where you kind of need a nice kind of whitewater drift boat, or are people taking the skiffs through there?
I know some people do take skiffs through there, but definitely having a higher bow or a raft would be
a little better for your day.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing. There's tons of opportunities there. And then do you guys do at the shop, are you doing some guiding? Do you have guides out of the shop, or is it more, I guess you're in the city, so you just kind of cover that?
Yeah, so we don't run any guides out of the shop, which is kind of nice because we can, we're friends with everyone, right? We don't have to just be loyal to one group of guides or anything that direction. So, and it's nice and easy. You don't have to deal with the client aspect, or we just have people stop in and talk about fishing.
Talk fishing. Yeah. So if people want a guide trip, you kind of direct them to whoever in that area. Is that kind of how you do it?
Yeah, because we're all guides in Idaho have to be licensed through an outfitter. There's a number of different outfitters for each section. We just say, hey, if you're going to go fish this place, here's the list of outfitters that there is in that area. And really during the summer, it's an availability game. So as much as we'd love to say, oh, if you call these people up, they'll for sure have an opening. A lot of these places get booked out a year or so in advance, especially like during prime time. So
yeah, that's right. I know. Yeah, you gotta be way in advance if you want to fish the prime spots and prime time. What do you think is the prime time for the South Fork of the Snake? Because I know you can fish throughout the year, but is there a bunch of different times of the year where it can fish good?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I love to go during like May and June and runoff is happening, but July is awesome if you can get the salmon fly hatch timed right. And, heading into August, I really like to fish big foam dries. And so that's kind of my favorite time to head out.
Right. And then that's the salmon fly. So when those start coming off, and is that a little bit later through June, most of June, or is that a short window, or how long does that salmon fly hatch last?
It just depends on water temperatures. And I mean, you can chase it for a while through the different sections because, it starts low and moves up. So, I mean, really, you have a couple week window that you can fish in different sections of the snake and chase those bigger bugs. But end of June, beginning of July is really when that kicks off. It just depends on water temps and how much water's coming out of the dam at that time or things that direction.
Sure. But that'd be a great time to head out there, is to try to catch that. And if you had a boat, you might be able to float some sections. And what does your setup look like? So you have like the chubby on top. Maybe talk about your dry fly setup for that.
Yeah, so I'm kind of under the belief, like, I'm not really into the dry dropper gang because I feel like you're doing both things kind of halfway. So you either focus on the big dry or you focus on nymphing. And I really will just pick whatever size 4, size 6 foam dry for the day and just focus on, getting up into the underneath those overhanging trees or whatever that direction, just getting as close as I can to that bank and twitching it out there is my favorite. So
right, and twitching it. So how do you avoid getting hooked up in the tree, getting into that? What's your tip there?
The thing is, it's just like I tell people, you're gonna lose flies for the day. If you're not getting your fly caught in the tree, then you're not casting close enough. So just being willing to lose flies, but it's fun to practice your cast to get up under the tree because it's not really what you're used to doing on a day-to-day basis, I feel like.
Yeah, I guess you just have to practice and get pretty exact. I mean, really, that's the cool thing with the fly rod is you can get pretty in that zone, right? Do you ever feel that way where you're kind of in the zone and you're casting perfectly and getting under the tree? And that's probably a pretty good feeling, right?
Yeah, my husband and I will always it's a joke. You'll make kind of a gutsy cast and we'll we have this look that we'll give each other like, oh yeah, like that was a sendy cast. The fish better eat that. And then they don't, but it's, it's fun because you both kind of know like, yeah, you hit the right spot.
Right. You hit your spot. Yeah. I heard this tip from one of our expert casting instructors that have, we've had a number on here, but they said, you get the plates or the rings out, and you're trying to make your fly in the grass practicing. But instead of just trying to make it in the ring, practice, find a little speck of rock right in the middle and try to hit that thing. You know what I mean? Like get very exact. And I guess if you do that enough times, that'll help your accuracy.
Yeah, for
right?
sure. I'd say so.
But there's nothing that, getting on the water and like you said, casting something under the tree is pretty amazing. Is that when you're on the South Fork, are those the places you're pretty much casting up against the bank under the tree? You're not really catching a lot of fish out in the mid channel. Is that true?
There's some spots where you want to fish like 2-3 feet off the bank, but for the most part, I like to just get uptight and then twitch it out. And some people, there's like mixed views on whether you should be moving your fly a lot and I guess it could just depend on the day, but I feel like I have the most success when I am pretty aggressive with twitching my fly.
And what is the twitch? To describe that, is that just you're kind of just flicking your wrist a little bit, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I'd guess so. Like I kind of do like some funky like half mend kind of a deal just to give the fly some movement or just staying pretty tight with it and just wiggling the tip of your rod because, I mean, if the tip of your rod's moving, your line or your fly is moving as well. So
yeah, so just kind of wiggling, just basically just wiggling. Yeah, do a quick little wiggle and that just kind of, I mean, it makes sense. It puts movement on the fly.
Yeah, and I mean, where the South Fork is so cutthroat heavy, I feel like that they're more in for the reaction strikes. I mean, it's when you're fishing bright purple and bright red, you're just trying to find something aggressive and flashy to wake them up.
Yeah, because these are not West Slope cutthroats, right? These are the Yellowstone cutties for the most part.
Yep.
Yeah, and are those as aggressive as, I'm not sure if you've caught many of the West Slopes, but those are pretty aggressive fish, right?
I haven't done any West Slopes, so I wouldn't be able to compare those.
Yeah. Well, I've done a little bit, and they are super aggressive, at least where I've been, kind of more towards Washington or whatever. But yeah, I mean, they'll take any dry fly. I'm literally like, we floated the middle fork of the salmon on one trip back in the day. And I remember I had a friend that was a beginner. He was on my boat and you throw your fly out there on the surface and they're hitting it. But is that the Yellowstone? I'm assuming that's not quite at that level.
No, I wouldn't say that they're to that extent. They're a little more lethargic than that. But because some people think that they're boring to catch just because of the way that they can fight, I guess. I don't know. They're my favorite fish to catch, but I wouldn't say that they're boring like some people I've heard say.
No, and there's also rainbows right in there too, and rainbows and browns in the South Fork.
There is. They're trying to remove the rainbows so that it's a more cutthroat, dense population.
Yeah, which is raising some concern, I think, from some people out there, right? Removing probably some of the bigger fish, maybe in the river.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's one that I kind of like to say, I don't have the degree that the people have that are making these decisions, so
that's a good way.
I just I stay neutral on that one.
Yeah, definitely. That's a smart move. What about in the shop there? As far as products, we're talking on the South Fork. Do you guys have any new products coming in or anything you want to, shed light on the shop there?
We always make sure that we cater our gear to, the people that are heading out on the South Fork. So, making sure you have a good 9-foot 5-weight rod and, the lines to pair with that. And then, carrying a large selection of flies for that area as well. I wouldn't say that there's for sure specifics because everyone has their bread and butter, whether they like Sage over Orbis over Winston kind of a deal.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. That's the thing about the rods is now, right? It's just everything's great pretty much.
Absolutely.
It's hard to find a bad rod, which is good. But well, what about on the casting? So I know that's something in shops. Sometimes you have somebody that's brand new. They walk in there and they're like, oh man, maybe they just pick up a rod or you help them get a rod. Are you doing a little casting instruction out on the sidewalk or how would you coach them on to get them casting?
We don't really do any instruction that direction. Being right in downtown, casting in this shop is kind of funky. You kind of have to go walk. But really what's super cool about this day and age is the resources that YouTube provides. So you can just sit and watch hours worth of casting YouTube videos and have a pretty good idea, I feel like.
Yeah, that's true. And I love that. That's a perfect thing for the fly fish food, right? Because you guys have such a huge YouTube channel. And I'm guessing that Cheech, are there some fly fish food casting demos out there?
I think there is a few. I don't know. I haven't really dug for those.
Yeah, you'll have to check that out or hit up Cheech or Curtis. I guess, and Lance, is he still out there at the shop down there, down south? Yep.
So he's the shop manager for the Utah store.
That's right. And is just Fly Fish Food is just the 2 stores now?
Yep. So they have the location in Orem and they have their giant warehouse and they just opened up a little mini boat shop.
Oh, boat shop.
Yeah, down there as well. So they're carrying a lot of Dave Scadden, Flycraft kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
Through there. But yeah, so they have a pretty large, setup and a full warehouse crew and their shop staff down there as well.
Right. Yeah, I remember hearing about that. That's awesome. So the boat shop's going and you got the crew. But yeah, you have to hit that up and see. We'll have to take a look if there's some Fly Fish Food casting videos. We recently had, I'm not sure, do you remember, you probably heard of Maxine McCormick? She was
yeah, for sure.
Well, I just interviewed Chris Korich, which is her coach.
Oh, cool.
And we'll put a link out to that episode. It was amazing because Chris is, one of the best casters in the world. And he took basically, I didn't know the whole story, but he told how he took Maxine. She was 9 years old when she got started. And within a year or two, she was winning championships.
That's insane.
And I was asking, right? It's insane. I was like, how is that possible? And it kind of surprised me because obviously there's some dedication and skill there. But what he talked about was the rod. He said that there's a big issue in, in this country, especially that a lot of people are getting the wrong rods. And what she used was a rod, and what they all use when they're casting is these rods from the 70s and 80s, like first generation graphite or even fiberglass, because it's full flexing and it's just made for casting. It's made, especially learning to cast. So that was a great tip. He said that actually the typical rods you find out there a lot are almost too stiff.
Yeah.
Especially for new, and you want to be able to feel it, right? And I have a few rods like that where you can feel the line all the way into the handle. So that was a good tip, and a good tip for anybody listening now that if they're new to casting or if they want to check that out, I think those fiberglass rods or the full flex is, pretty important. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, for sure. Because one of the things, and I get a little kickback from this when I tell people when they're getting their first rod, because everyone's like fast action, fast action, fast action. And I kind of get bored of the who can make the fastest rod game that I feel like some people play. But it's for when you're first learning how to cast, how are you supposed to learn how the rod loads if it does it too quick before you can even notice it. So no, I definitely understand that point for sure.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. And that was what Chris was saying, is that, there are some places, especially like wind and, higher levels where those fast action rods are great. But, for somebody newer to it, it's the slow action. So I think I'm going to be thinking more about that as I go, because I think we all, I'm the same. I'm no professional caster. I love fly casting. But for you, do you feel like you have some room to improve your casting? Or are you doing doing any spay castings, trout spay, any of that stuff?
I've tried to do a little bit of the spay deal, but that's the cool thing with fly fishing is no one's ever perfect at it, and if anyone says they're done learning, then they're wrong. But it's a never-ending game of practice, right? So, like, I want to be Maxine when I grow up. Like, she's...
I know. It's pretty cool. I can't wait to get her on the podcast. Hopefully she'll have time. I think she's in college and doing some other stuff, but yeah, that is a great story. So good. Well, walk us out. I don't want to leave the shop too far because, I love the shop talk stuff. So what is it, let's just say somebody hasn't been there before. When they walk in the shop, open the door, they're downtown, what are they seeing? What's sticking out to them? Is it the flies? Is it the materials? Is the place surrounded by fly tying materials? Give us a little insight.
So like when you walk in the shop, we have our front counter and we have like the majority of our clothing. But as soon as people take a few steps back, they'll see our big fly display, which we keep really well lit. And it's pretty bright and flashy. So people are like, oh my gosh, look how many flies. And then, we'll ask like, do you tie? They're like, yeah, I tie a little bit. And I'm like, well, then you should go check around the corner. And when you walk around the corner, it's just a giant of just all fly tying. So that always blows people away. Because they're like, oh yeah, I'm sure you guys have some materials. Like, no, we have all the materials.
Really? So you have another room basically of fly tying materials?
Yeah. So just the way that the shop's connected, it's kind of an L. So you just kind of walk, and then the main stem of it is just going to be all the tying stuff.
Oh, I see. So you walk in the door, and the first part of the L, you're seeing kind of the flies and everything. Then you turn the corner, and you have all the fly tying.
Yep.
Gotcha. Is it set up the same way when Jimmy was there? Like if Jimmy was back in the shop, was he sitting in the same place where you're kind of sitting?
Yeah, we kept like the main structure pretty well the same, but we brought in a lot more fixtures that made more room for inventory. But yeah, it's pretty well the same. The front counter, we got a new front counter, but it's in the same spot, kind of a deal. And the office is the same. And
yep, it's all the same. Cool. This is good. Well, anything else you would give people listening now if they're kind of heading in maybe to that area for the first time, maybe they're flying in or driving through? Any other tips or anything you would tell them to maybe have success, on the water out there?
The term success is kind of an interesting one, I think, because, every day people come in and they're like, well, I want to have a good day. Well, what's a good day to you? Because you're also in like some of the most beautiful country of the world in the world. And I feel like people think that good days, they have to go catch 30 fish. And so, there is the success that direction. But the success also could be that they made it to a bucket list destination, and to really take in that, because, the fishing might not be good that day. And to just get into your head that, well, I'm going into the South Fork or the Henry's Fork, these world-renowned fisheries, I'm going to go catch my personal best, I just don't think is the right mentality to take into it versus, I had a good day because I got to go fish this place and it was beautiful, and I got to throw a salmon fly at a rising fish and it ate my bug, and that one fish made the day for me. So I think just not getting into your head that you're going to go have the most epic fishing of your life versus you get to be in some of the most beautiful country.
Totally. Yeah, that is a great reminder. And that's what's awesome about that country, is that it is spectacular, right? You mentioned the Tetons. How would you describe that area down there? It seems like once you get in, God, you're on the river, you got these giant mountains. If somebody who hasn't seen it before, what would you tell them? How would you describe it?
The South Fork is really a beautiful place because there's a giant canyon full of cottonwoods with beautiful river with different little riffles along it. You're driving through, kind of a mountainy pass, I guess you could call it that in some areas. And then, you come around the corner and you follow the South Fork into Wyoming, which can then take you into Jackson Hole. So you can, see those mountains that make up, get closer into the Teton area. And it's a beautiful place. And then you go up into the Henry's Fork, and like the lower part of the Henry's Fork, you're surrounded by a lot more like farmland, but it's still a beautiful place with different, the different pine trees going up that direction. And, getting up into the ranch is, the Island Park area is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty diverse, but is it high, would you call it, I don't know, Great Plains or high, kind of, what do you call that area with it, kind of just generally
I think that's it's kind of hard to generalize, because you look at one side and you're full of sagebrush, and then the other side you're in the mountains. So with pine trees kind of a deal. So we kind of have a good mix. Like Idaho Falls itself is, considered a desert.
Right. It's a desert. That's the thing. Idaho Falls is a desert. This is not, you're not getting a ton of rain throughout the year, right?
Nope. And so, we have a ton of sagebrush. We have a big sand dune area just north of Idaho Falls. And so it's really a interesting mix of country.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Nice. Yeah. And I mean, there's tons of stuff to do out there. We've been talking a lot about that, which is cool. So good. Well, we're going to take it out of here in a little bit. And, we have this segment we call our kind of top 3 flies segment. And you mentioned one of them, I think. If somebody was in there, what are the other top ones? Somebody's coming into the shop. What are the flies people are buying? If you say a top few flies, is the chubby's got to be one of them? Yeah,
chubbies for sure. The different types of like perdigon nymphs are gaining popularity, and not just like to Euro nymph, just to throw off the back of the chubby. Especially, July and August, a lot of the pink Albert kind of stuff.
What is the pink Albert? That's kind of describe that one.
So pink Albert's like, you can call them a pink PMD, I guess. But I think they're actually like a brown drake subspecies or something. I don't know the exacts on it, but it's
but it's got pink.
It's kind of a pinkish hue. So like a pink Albert hackle stacker, I'd say would be like one of our most popular flies that direction.
Okay. And the pink is good because it just gives you a nice, you can see it, right? Is that the point?
It's actually like the body style is.
Oh, it's the body. Okay.
Yeah, the body is a pink. That these bugs are kind of have that pinkish hue to them.
Oh, there you go. Okay, cool. So the pink Albert and pink. I was going to ask you another question. This is interesting on just the pink. I was recently talking to Heather Hodson on a recent podcast, and I was getting an update on kind of, the Orvis had the 50-50 thing, but trying to get more women on the water. Do you see in the shop there, like what percentage of people coming in are kind of men versus women, in the shop? Do you notice that much?
Yeah, it's a pretty slim percentage of women coming into the shop. Like women in the fly fishing industry is a really interesting topic, and I'm sure Heather expanded on this really well.
A little bit. We didn't get into it really deep. We just kind of brushed on it. But I'm curious from your perspective, because you are in the fly shop, and I know some people have complained that's one of the issues, right? Like fly shops aren't set up for women, and it kind of makes sense a little bit because obviously, like you're saying, it's majority men. But yeah, what is your take on it?
And it's an interesting one because I've grown up in the fly fishing industry, so I've always kind of been odd man out that direction. You're in a group of 40-year-old guys at 20 years old. Like that's just kind of the way it is. I think it's great that more women want to get in, but it's also interesting. I've noticed, like, because I go fish with my husband, or I was taught how to fish by my dad, I don't get put into this category of like, well, girl power. And like I said, I love the fact that more women want to get into it, but it's an interesting one. There's like 2 categories of like shame all guys because versus I just want to go out and fish because it's fun to go out and fish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the shame all guys thing seems kind of, not good. And I think part of it is, I guess, that, a woman comes into a fly shop and then you're obviously, you would be different, I'm sure, but, a guy is behind the counter and maybe he doesn't give her the time of day or thinks that maybe, she kind of plays down because maybe she's not knowledgeable, right? I don't know. That's some of the stuff you hear about, which I'm sure is true.
Yeah.
So that's the question, is how do you avoid that? But I'm guessing, at Jimmy's that there at your shop, that probably doesn't happen. You kind of see it like whether it's a woman or a man, it's kind of the same thing. You treat them the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny on the receiving end of things, I get asked, every other day if I even fish. And it's like, well, gosh, I don't know why I would be working in a fly shop, let alone managing a fly shop, if I didn't fish. So I always just respond, yeah, I do. Do you? Yeah. And it kind of like puts them in a stumble because they're like, well, yeah, I guess I do because I'm in the fly shop. And yeah, so it's It's just kind of a funny one.
Yeah, you kind of almost make it funny.
Yeah.
Right. And then they see I feel like most people, I mean, I'm just thinking they're not even aware. I don't think people are trying to be, you know what I mean? Like that's just kind of because it's this bias that's just probably there naturally. So I don't know, the 50-50 movement, I'm not even sure if Orvis is talking much about that, but I guess the original thought there was to just help get more women involved and make it easier for people, right? Do you know much about that? Is that kind of your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that, providing fair and equal opportunities for women to get out there and not just, I feel like fly fishing for the longest time has been an old man's club. And, at the end of the day, like that's the majority of the industry. And you have to recognize that, but also still recognize that the industry is ever changing and that more girls want to get into it. And so they should be provided the opportunity. And so.
Exactly. Nice. Perfect. Well, I've got a couple of kind of random ones, and then we'll take it out of here today. I always love to get a little insight onto the area. So you mentioned, you're in the city. So if somebody was coming in there, maybe on their way out or back from a trip, do you have some local restaurants that you would point people to or that you love?
Yeah, the first one that we always recommend is the Snake Bite. That's just a block over from the shop. It's a pretty locally known restaurant. It's been around for a long time. Harrison Ford flies in to go eat at the Snake Bite. Yeah.
Nice. So he's a big fisherman. That's right.
Yeah, and he has that. I think he has a place in Jackson Hole, and so he comes into Idaho Falls. I would guess a fair amount from what I've heard. I've never ran into him, but
you haven't. Are there a few? I'm assuming there's a few big. I know we've talked to Henry Winkler, the Fonz, on the podcast, and there's kind of a few. Have you seen other celebrities coming through for fly fishing or anything there?
The dad from Modern Family, what is his name? I think it's Ty Burrell. He stopped in the shop last year, and it was kind of a funny one because you're like, wait, you kind of look like someone I know. And like, well, it can't be him because that'd be weird that he's in a fly shop in Idaho Falls. And then we had one customer come up and ask him, like, are you the dad from Modern Family? Or he said, you look just like the dad from Modern Family. He's like, well, that's because I am. I'm like, wow. Oh my gosh. Well, look at that.
There you go. Nice. So the Snake Bite's a good place. And then what about things to do? So if you're not fishing, what is Idaho Falls? I mean, it's like you said, it's in the desert. Anything going on throughout the year there, in that area?
So we have a pretty cool farmers market that runs on Saturdays through the summer. But I mean, there's a lot of hiking around. People will, dirt bike, mountain bike, the outdoor recreation in a whole. I mean, it's a popular destination to go hunt as well.
Yeah.
So
right, hunting's huge.
Yep, for sure. So I mean, we have great upland hunting, big game hunting, waterfowl. We're pretty special that direction.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing. I'm assuming there's probably as many, if not more, hunters, and then all the other outdoor activities. Right, there's lots of other stuff to do there.
Yep.
Does the fishing there? Are you there working throughout the year? Does it change? What happens in the wintertime, say after January, February? Is there still some fishing to be found out there?
Yeah, the South Fork fishes well all year. It just depends on how you would like to fish it, kind of a deal. So midge hatches. Nymphing gets really productive. So the water stays open, so it's not like you're frozen out of anything. And then we have a lot of people, getting ready to go, steelhead or things direction.
Yeah, steelhead is not far. How far do you have to go for steelhead from Idaho Falls?
It's about 3 hours.
Yeah, so head over to the salmon, or where would people?
The salmon.
Yeah, salmon. Then Clearwater probably isn't too far. Just head west out there.
Yeah, I think we're about 6 or 7 hours from the Clearwater.
Okay. Yeah, so the salmon's the closer one.
Yep.
That's not bad at all. Yeah, so you do have steelhead within a few hours, and then, like we said, you got everything else around you. Do you get down to Utah much? I know, obviously, the headquarters is down there. Is there some good waters to fish down there? I know there's a few.
I haven't gone and fished there too much. I've gone a couple times. But yeah, the Provo and the Weber, some of the, still waters there are really popular. Like Strawberry outside of that, just outside of Orem too.
That's right. Nice. When somebody comes in on the fly shop, and what would be your advice to them? Do you have any how do they get the most out of a fly shop? Do you have any questions, dumb questions you get asked, or things people shouldn't be asking? Or what would you tell somebody now that maybe hasn't been to a shop or, wants to do the right thing? Because I know sometimes one thing you don't want to do in a shop is go in there and not buy anything, right? Like get a bunch of advice and not buy something. Is that Is that good to be thinking about?
It's a funny one because, like, someone told me one time, like, I don't go into a fly shop without spending $40 because I feel like that's what their time is worth. And not necessarily saying that my time is worth that, but I just thought it made me have a different perspective on going into a shop because, I want to make sure that I'm not just taking info and leaving.
Yep. Buying from Amazon, right?
Yep, exactly. But I mean, one of the questions we always get asked, or not always get asked, but, people ask, well, what are they hitting on?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Where, how, when, what?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. What are they hitting on?
Yep, exactly. So it's like
Too general.
Yep.
So you stop, you walking through, like you said at the start, you kind of walking through like, hey, first of all, how much time do you have? And then maybe you start talking about getting a feel for their skill level. Like they're probably not going to the, some of these popular or these high pressure sections if they're not the highest skill, right? So you're kind of checking that out and then directing them from that point.
Yeah, I'd say so. And I mean, the other part of it is I don't feel like you have to be an expert to fish in a lot of places around here because, every blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, right? But
yeah, so it's great about fishing.
Yeah, you can have a beginner fisherman come in and show you a picture of a 27-inch brown he just caught. So I would never discredit someone that direction, and everyone's got a different way to fish or that they prefer to fish. And if you have someone coming in saying, well, I only throw size 16 dries, well, you might not. So you kind of have to cater to preferences that direction.
Right. Or I don't Euro nymph, right?
Yep.
Or I don't nymph at all. I mean, do you get, I'm sure Euro nymphing, especially with Lance down at the other shop, are you getting in on that? Is that something you do a little bit of?
To be honest, I've never tried Euro nymphing.
Nice. There you go.
I mean, not to discredit people that do it.
Lance hasn't poked you at all? Well, I guess that's the cool thing about Lance is not like he does everything. I mean, he's a great fisherman, right?
Yep, exactly. So, with the limited time that I get out to go fish, I kind of have the mentality, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to fish the way I want to fish. And if I don't catch a fish, that's fine. I felt good about how I was fishing. And
yeah.
So, because it doesn't really excite me to, a lot of people do the double nymph under an indicator deal. Like if I'm going to fish, that's not really what appeals the most to me. So I'm not going to focus on it.
Yeah, perfect. Good. All right, Madison. Well, I think we could leave it there for today. We will send everybody out to flyfishfood.com, Jimmy's. They can find it there. And then you're at Madison Losee _ on Instagram, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Perfect. Well, thanks for all the time today. This has been great. I appreciate you shedding light on the shop. I will be stopping by there for sure and checking it out. Next time, I'm not sure when our next trip is going to be out there, but we're hoping to do some more stuff this next year. So yeah, thanks again, and I appreciate all your insight today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
All right, quick call to action. Head over to the website. That's flyfishfood.com. Check in there. You can also check in with Madison Losee _ on Instagram. Check it out right now. Let her know you heard this podcast. And if you get a chance, would love if you follow the show. If you've been enjoying our program here, focusing on some of the Yellowstone Teton territory, you can check in there as well. That's wetflyswing.com/Teton. And you can find out some of the other shops, outfitters. If you're interested in heading out to this part of the world, the best chance, some of your best success, especially if you're new, is to get an outfitter, get a guide. Head over to wetflyswing.com/Teton right now, and you're going to be able to check out some of those great lodges and operations. All right, we're heading out of here. Hope you enjoyed this one. Looking forward to getting to that next episode. Enjoy it, and we'll look forward to talking to you very soon.